Hey guys, my name is Tari Lima and I help adult children of narcissists gain a sense of self and live a boundaried life where they thrive. So a lot of my clients and students believe that if their parents are not actual narcissists, then this means that they are ungrateful children and that they don't have the right to set boundaries or to express any of their needs. Now, I do notice that this oftentimes happens because people confuse what narcissism is. If you go online and you look up narcissistic personality disorder, you'll probably come across a very simple caricature that is an exaggeration of narcissistic traits. For example, you might come across the whole lack of empathy thing, which of course does mean that narcissistic individuals really do act in ways that aren't empathetic. They exploit people, they use people, right? They're envious of people, they compete with people. So yeah, there's a lack of empathy here. But narcissism is not about not having certain emotional reactions. It's not true, for example, that 0% of narcissists feel emotional empathy. What the literature actually teaches us is that narcissism is about only being able to take into consideration that which pertains to the person's self-esteem regulation. So what this actually looks like in a day-to-day scenario is that a narcissistic person who has the ability to feel all emotions might feel those emotions, but they're still going to act in such a way where they will not admit to wrongdoings and faults because the personality is absolutely dominated by the need to rewrite narratives in such a way where they are special, they are right, you are wrong, things are your fault. So I'll give you a specific example, right? I had a friend whose cat died, and her narcissistic mother did get sad. You know, the cat was a member of the family and everybody enjoyed the cat's company, including this narcissistic mother who had access to all of her emotions. So she did get sad. And then my friend was like, well, sadness means that she is reacting to the loss of the kitty cat, right? Now, this friend of mine knows about narcissism, and she knows that narcissists have emotional reactions. So this didn't invalidate her reading of her mother being narcissistic. Because what happened right after the sadness was demonstrated was a completely narcissistic response. Her mother said, you know, your cat died because you were traveling. He probably died of loneliness. So you see what happened here? This is the part that shows her narcissistic personality functioning. This is the part that shows the actual lack of empathy, not effective empathy, but the inability to actually take someone else's current needs into account over her own need as a narcissistic mother to compete with her child and make her child feel inferior and bad and ungrateful and broken. So you see, this is a scenario where, yeah, we're dealing with a narcissistic individual. This narcissistic individual feels sadness and all of the other emotions, but the way that they react to things that are happening in the household is specifically making the scapegoat feel inferior, blamed for everything, feeling like they're inherently broken, feeling like they're ungrateful children, so on and so forth. Now, it's a good thing that this friend of mine knows about narcissism. She knows everything about how toxic family systems work. But can you imagine someone else who doesn't know about these issues? Can you imagine someone losing their little doggy or their little cat, and then when they go home, their mother or father is like, oh, they died because of you, you know? Being that that's absolutely not the case, you know, there's no reason to think that a completely healthy animal would have died out of sadness in a matter of a few hours, right? So the point of this video is, it's important for us to take into consideration what we actually need in our relationships, and not just whether we think the other person fits a diagnostic category. Because, for example, if my cat just died and my mom says something like that, it doesn't matter if she's a narcissist or not. What matters is that I just lost my cat and my mom just told me that it's my fault in an impossible situation. This is what matters. Even if I discover, my mom is not a narcissist or my dad is not a narcissist, I still have the right to, in such a situation, say, hey, that's inappropriate. I'm dealing with grief here. It's completely inappropriate for you to make such a comment. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to have such conversations with your narcissistic mother or father if they are very high on the spectrum, because they won't listen to you. But I am saying that regardless of their ability to listen to you, you still have the right to set the boundary. You still have the right to have the need. You still have the right to have the emotional reaction. And let us all be very clear on one thing. Narcissism is not about not having emotional reactions. Some narcissists have many emotional reactions, some do not. Some are psychopathic or have alexithymia. They don't access their emotions, right? But there are all sorts of narcissists with all sorts of different neurological systems, all right? Narcissism is about making daily decisions that involve regulating one's self-esteem in such a way where they feel special above everything else. And if you see that a person is interacting with everybody in such a way where they're constantly regulating their self-esteem in such a way where they're right and they're special and the other person is wrong and they need validation for being right and special, then you're dealing with someone on the narcissism spectrum, regardless of whether they access emotions or not. And regardless of them being on the spectrum or not, the whole idea of building a sense of self after a toxic family system does involve giving yourself radical permission to call the shots. We gotta differentiate between, hey, I wanna call the shots in my life, and hey, this means that I'm an ungrateful child, right? But if you wanna know more about these types of topics, then you can watch other videos on my channel. This channel is completely dedicated to helping adult children of narcissistic parents understand and overcome toxic family dynamics whilst reconnecting to their self, building a sense of self, being clear on analyzing reality, and knowing how to set and maintain boundaries. If you thought this video was helpful, then one of these other videos might be helpful as well.